Everybody, Lisa Sabaniak here from lifelikeyoumeanit.com, coming to you live for our Motivation Monday. I hope you had a fabulous weekend. Not much to be going on and going and doing, of course, for any of us, and no matter where we are in the world, but I hope that you were still able to find some beauty in your weekend. So I thought what I would like to talk about today is about how we tend to create a lot of problems of our own. And this could be a little bit of a touchy subject because there's not a lot of people that will actually be willing and able to turn the tables on themselves and look in the mirror and be able to honestly say, actually, yeah, I do this, and I'm going to bring awareness to this, and I'm going to stop doing it, right? Because it is a little bit embarrassing when you realize that you are doing this to yourself. But I'm just going to put it out there. Everybody does this, right? This is a normal part of our psyche. So if you're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, this is me as this video goes on, there's no need to be embarrassed, because the reality is everybody should be resonating with this, and it's only going to be the people who are ready, willing, and able to look at themselves a bit differently who will actually recognize that, and everybody else will say, oh, thank goodness that's not me. So what I'm talking about is this need that we have to create a problem so that we then have the pleasure of fixing the problem. I'm going to give you a really great example that I think everybody can relate to in one way, shape, or form. You decide to go outside for your little bit of exercise that you're allowed in lockdown. And if it is winter, as it is here in the UK, then maybe it's really cold outside. Maybe it's that bitter kind of damp cold with quite an Arctic wind. Or maybe you live in the southern hemisphere and it is summer now, and so maybe it's nice and hot, but maybe it's humid and you're not able to actually get any relief from sweating because it's so humid out there. Either way, you're out, you're enjoying your walk, and that little voice that's in all of our heads pipes up to tell you about what the weather is like, to actually say something like, gosh, it's really cold out here, or, oh my gosh, I am sweating to death over here. We don't really need that voice. I mean, we're outside experiencing that cold or that heat, right? We're in the weather ourselves. We don't actually need to tell ourselves that we're experiencing cold. We're smart enough to figure that part out. So why do we do it? Well, think about what the next thing is that you typically say to yourself. And if you're anything like me, that next thing is the solution, or as much of a solution as you can create at that time. If I'm outside, I've got my dog with me. I'm taking him for a walk. And so when I tell myself that it's cold outside, then my solution is, yeah, but in about 10 or 15 minutes, you'll be back home, and oh, it'll be so nice and warm in there. You can make a nice hot cuppa. You can put on your warm fuzzy slippers, and everything will be right as rain. And see what I've just done there? I've created a solution to the problem. But did the problem actually exist? Is the fact that it's cold outside an actual problem? Or is it just me noticing what the weather is, turning it into a problem, so then I have the privilege of solving the problem for myself and feeling fabulous about it? Even though we really don't give it any attention whatsoever, it doesn't really seem like this is something that we would be tooting our own horn about. But yet it is. We have just solved a problem that makes us feel good. But yet, you just can't escape the fact that the problem really didn't exist. It wasn't really a problem that it was cold outside. You turned it into a problem so that you can create a solution. And so if you resonate with that, if you're one of the ones that sits and watches and goes, oh my God, I do that too. Right now, I want you to think about how often you might do that in your business. How often in your personal life, right? How often do you find, let's stay with business, do you find that you have been working super hard on your launch? Maybe you've done all of the research and you know exactly what your audience is looking for. You have, brought them into the fold. Maybe you've even beta tested a couple of times with people. You are positive this is ready to go. And then a problem comes up that you've got to solve. Oh, you can't launch it right now. I've got to solve this problem first. Or maybe you're just at the stage where you're coming up with your next idea, or you're getting organized for something that is going to be big, that it feels really big, right? And you're just in the throes of things, you're all inspired. Oh, and then a problem comes up. Right? Sometimes legitimately there are things that pop up that we go, oh, sugar, I hadn't thought of that. I am going to actually need to sort this. But how often do those problems actually turn out to be more like the weather in that example that I gave? Something that exists that isn't actually a problem. It doesn't actually need a solution, but we're going to turn it into a problem so that we can find a solution so that we feel proud of ourselves for finding that solution. And maybe, just maybe, that while we're taking the time to do that, we're actually saving ourselves from actually having to do the launch or bringing this idea to the next stage, because now we're at risk, right? We're at risk of rejection. Once we launch it, it's either hit or miss, right? And for some of us, starting to come up with a problem that we need to solve is a great distraction. It's a great way to procrastinate from actually doing the launch, right? We'll just create a little problem over here that we need to spend some time to solve. Really, the problem didn't exist at all. So I'm going to leave you with that, with some really lovely food for thought, to really start looking at yourself, looking at that voice that's in your head, how often it talks to you about stuff that you already know, that it doesn't really need to point that out. And how often are you turning something into a problem just so that you can fix it? You can find the solution to that problem. So in other words, how often are the problems you're facing actually legitimate compared to created by your psyche? Bless.